about this later on, but it brings in the debate around the H1 and H2 sites. What we will say is that those areas of constraint, we would ask anyone who's considering development to engage with Northern Ireland Water at the earliest opportunity. We would advocate that you come and speak to us even before planning, so that the developer services team can work with you. Potentially, there are opportunities within that area that's shown red in some of those areas to work with us and alleviate some of the constraints through developer-led and funded solutions. So one of the key tools that we will use to do that is stormwater offsetting. So if there's an opportunity to remove stormwater that gets into our combined sewers, and the vast majority of the sewers and around the older parts of the city will be combined. If we can remove stormwater from that network, then that frees up capacity and allows additional foul load to go into it. And it's a working arrangement that we have with NIEA that if we do that on a zero detriment basis, they will agree to the development continuing. And that's why I would ask is that at a very early stage, come and talk to us. And I know there's a lot of interest in around the university development, and certainly for what we've seen in the initial phases, we think we can make some accommodation there. And if you sort of even recognise that a lot of the area there is what would be brownfield sites, so you're developing on existing infrastructure that may have existing loading, and we will take that into account as well. So the ask of that is come talk to us and we can see what we can do to help try and mitigate some of those constraints within that area of red, but noting that the areas of black hatching require completely new infrastructure to take any flows away from those areas. Okay, thank you. So just in summary then of that, what we're saying is that within the sort of city area, we have 63 storm overflows in that Culmore catchment, 52 or 83% of which have been classified as unsatisfactory. So it is a difficult situation for us to try and manage, and it's one that we recognise and have put in place plans to try and alleviate those constraints. And that's recognised in our current PC21 business plan, which we are working through at the moment. Through modelling, we estimate that circa 1.4, 1.5 million cubic metres of dilute sewage on an annual basis may be discharged from those storm overflows into the Lough Foyle catchment through local watercourses. And that's based on model data. It's not based on any instrumentations that we have in those CSOs at the moment. So it depends on rainfall, obviously, and whether that rainfall sort of is equivalent to the models. But again, those models are industry best practice and gives a really good idea of where those constraints are and where the particular issues are. And at this moment in time, we have a very high level estimate, which we will further develop as we start to work through the programme of work to fix those overflow spills. It's in the order of 90 to 135 million required to do that at the moment. Okay, the next slide, please. So this is just a bit on the pre-development process that I talked about at the start of the presentation, that centre section there in red. Please, the request here is come and talk to that developer services team as early as possible. They have a good track record to date of trying to find solutions, but obviously those opportunities become more and more limited as more and more opportunity is used up within the existing network. Okay. This next slide, please, is really then the PC development plan for all of Northern Ireland. And this would be reflective both of the work in around the city area here, but within the full context of the council area. So we have similar issues in Strabane and Castledurg as well. So it's covering the full extent of this council area, and it's reflected in that diagram, which is for all of Northern Ireland. And in essence, what it's showing there is our plan that was agreed with the utility regulator. So we know we have problems. We have done a lot of work to try and identify what needs to be done to resolve those problems. And we had that agreed with our utility regulator, who looked at it and said, yes, that seems like a good plan. And we agree with yourselves in terms of the costs required to alleviate those problems. And that was PC21, our 6-year business plan, and the proposed capital expenditure required to build out of that those issues. And you can see the quote there from NIEA, in that if we do not address the wastewater aspects, that there will be a potential deterioration in the water quality and the consequential impacts of that. So if you move on to the next slide, please, you can see then the impact of the constrained funding on the business plan capital expenditure that we're currently experiencing at the minute. Like a lot of other departments across Northern Ireland, funding is tight, and it's particularly tight for us. But what it means, in essence, is that we will be unable through the next 3 to 4 years of our capital programme to build out any enhancements in our wastewater infrastructure. We will focus any funding that we have on ensuring that we maintain the existing assets, that if they break, we fix them. And the management in general there is to keep things running, all the systems that we have in place. And then we will protect the clean water infrastructure to ensure that everyone has safe, clean drinking water at all times. And unfortunately, that means then that what's left over is a very, very small amount for any sort of wastewater enhancements. Indeed, we feel that as time goes on and we do less work on the wastewater infrastructure, that the base maintenance requirements will actually increase and eat into that even more. So it's quite a difficult picture for us to work with at the minute, where we're looking at ways and means of trying to minimise the impact. But in essence, we've lost just shy of £1 billion of funding to put into that wastewater recovery programme. Okay. So focusing here, I say, on the city itself, but there will be similar stories around the rest of the council area. Maybe not as bad, and certainly maybe more opportunities in some of the other areas. But looking specifically here, as I think we were asked to do, we have identified circa 5,300 units potentially affected in this area. 4,000 roughly are associated with the H1 and H2 lands, which require, as I mentioned at the start, completely new wastewater pumping stations and infrastructure. And at this moment in time, for the solution that we believe we need, which is 2 pumping stations and a section of pumping main for that, it's something in the order of £15 million of investment that's required. As we work through the details of the solution, we believe that there may well be other costs, because that will obviously have to connect into the existing network, and some of those failing assets that I mentioned before will have to be invested in to ensure that they perform on that zero detriment basis that I mentioned at the start. And that certainly is sort of our ideas at this minute to facilitate those 4,000 units. We're also aware then of another 331 units in the Clooney Road that are associated with the Strathfoyle siphons. These are 2 large sewers underneath the foil that we need to upgrade. They've been in situ for quite a period of time, and we reckon that there's about £10 million to upgrade those siphons in themselves, with a further £3.5 million for the inlet works and an upgrade to a pumping station associated with them. They are not in this current PC21 period because of the complexities and the detailed design that we need to do. We have looked at it, and they are going to be extremely difficult assets to, as you can imagine, to replace across the foil, and that's why we have pushed them into the PC27 period. Okay, and the next slide then is just, well, what are we endeavouring to do as a company to try and address some of those constraints in the interim period? We are fully committed to maximising the infrastructure we have in whatever means that we can, trying to maximise the storage within that network that we have. We are also investigating options for targeted interventions within our funding limits that maybe look at options to transfer from a constrained area to another constrained area, but particularly storm infrastructure. What can we do? Because the biggest flows within all of our network is rainwater. It's not actually foul water, it's rainwater, and it's how we manage the rainwater is where we'll get the biggest benefits. We're promoting, as I said at the start, those developer-led and financed solutions, and we've had a degree of success with a number of developers, so we know it works. We are encouraging the use of property-level SUDs, so that's sustainable urban drainage, where the stormwater is taken out of the network and managed in a blue-green fashion. The planning responses, as I say, come and talk to us early, but if we are able to find solutions through those wastewater impact assessments, we will put a positive condition on the planning, and that planning application then should progress through the system relatively quickly. We're looking at sustained funding, as you would imagine, to keep all of our capital works programme going. So we're in negotiations and discussions about that on a continuous basis. We are also seeking changes to the legislation that may allow developers to actually fund particular upgrades to NIW assets, but that will not be the panacea to this. It may give some relief in terms of smaller assets, but for the much larger assets, and you can see some of the money that we're talking about there, I don't think it will be the solution for all of our problems. And the next slide then is just a brief update. The next slide, please. It's just a brief update on terms of the progress at Foyle Street. It seems to be going particularly well. We plan to have the water mains tie-in completed, or should have been completed last week there. We're looking at some vacuum excavation of the sewers and the reinstatement, so that area is progressing well in phase 2. We are reopening right a lot of roads across Northern Ireland. We are reopening for the Christmas period, so we hope to have that hoarding removed the week commencing the 2nd of December. Foyle Street reopened to traffic the 9th, and then work to recommence in the new year on the 6th. With phase 3 in March and June of next year, and close out at July. So that's where we're making good progress. I know it has impacted on flow of traffic around the city, but hopefully we've minimised that as much as possible. And the last slide is just some of the photographs of the work that's ongoing there in that sewer and water mains rehab. And that's all I have in terms of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's as I said at the outset, there was a lot of interest at the committee last month, given the need, the immense housing need that exists in this city and district, and it was very useful to get the presentation from yourself around the constraints in relation to the water infrastructure that presents here, and I know that the figures that have been presented in your report about 1.5 million cubic meters of sewage going into our waterways is alarming, as is the number of, or the constraints around development, particularly of housing, and as you've alluded at the start, around a university expansion and all of that. So we have huge ambitions as a council to address the housing need, to grow the economy, but we need to work alongside yourselves in relation to doing that and upgrading infrastructure. So it's a very timely presentation. I know I've got a number of indicated speakers. I've got quite a few questions myself, but they may get answered by yourself. So I'll pass over to Councillor Heaney in the first instance.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Gary and Stephen for the presentation. I have a few questions here, but it's like there's absolutely no doubt the huge financial pressure that NI Water's under, and there's no disputing that. But of the funding that you are expecting to receive, my understanding it's 10 million bundles. How is that being prioritised, and is the Northwest a priority in that? A follow-on question is just in relation to H2. I represent that area. So is there capacity for any of the houses to be constructed within that region? And a follow-on to is in the bundles that I mentioned earlier, and if the Northwest is a priority, is the pumping station that would unlock that development included? And if not, why not? So that's me. A few questions, Chair. Thanks.
Guy, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a number of speakers. Next, Councillor Harkin, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and I agree with you. There is a lot of interest in this discussion, and I want to thank Gary and Stephen for coming in today. And there's a lot of interest in it, but when I proposed this, it was described as a stunt at this time, and it clearly very much isn't a stunt, because there is a lot of concern and deep interest about the future of our water infrastructure for a number of reasons. And the presentations today from NI Water, I appreciate them because they're very blunt, and they're frank. And I think that the funding crisis is very, very alarming, and that's one of the things that should give us all concern. And the reason I'm starting with that, because I've got two questions, is NI Water's had a special dispensation since 2007, when there was when there was new regulations where there would be higher expectations in terms of water safety, and because our infrastructure was so behind, we allowed NI Water to have a special dispensation so that overflows, sewage going into our waterways wouldn't be viewed as law breaking. And that's very important, because part of this discussion that we've had about there's an issue with monitoring, and we were told that it wasn't being monitored and we couldn't know how much was coming into the foil or into our waterways. That was something that the minister himself actually said back to this council. It was unknown how much sewage was going into the area because it wasn't being properly monitored. Fergal Sharkey has said this is not an issue about monitoring, this is an issue about law breaking, because if that special dispensation wasn't in place, what's happening to our waterways would be law breaking. And the two things that I'm concerned in relation to that are, one, the funding for infrastructure that you've described, the lack of it. You don't see any prospect of an overarching fixing of our infrastructure, and you're basically describing doing firefighting for the next number of years. That's very concerning. The other issue is when we try to hold anybody accountable for damage to our environment, when we have NI Water in the department basically allowing it to happen, what sort of message does that send out? It sounds like that will actually undermine our efforts to protect our environment. The second question I have relates to the housing situation at the Cashel. And look, people are really confused about what's going on, because NI Water is saying one thing, as in that it's a funding issue. That seems to be what I've heard from NI Water. And the minister, who was on TV is saying another, and it's creating an immense amount of confusion. So I'm hoping today that we can get clarity. I mean, there is, as you know, there is a massive housing crisis in Derry. We've got more than 6,000 applicants on the housing waiting list. 400 of those houses at the Cashel are Apex social housing units. We desperately want them to come online. So it's not about the blame game here. It's about what people want to hear is there a solution?
So how come you,
Yeah.
this isn't a presentation from yourself,
Right.
but we're questions. So is your questions finished?
No, I want to finish my question because
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it's not often, Chair, that you interrupt people, but I'll finish my question. My understanding is that most of the budget that NI Water was given was spent, but that now we're given an additional almost 20 million in the latest monitoring round. The estimated cost for a wastewater facility to progress the housing at the Cashel is 15. Can that money be spent? Because this is an urgent issue. Is that something that you're discussing? Is that something that you're looking at? Because I think that that's what people are aghast at, that there's houses that can be built now, but they're being held up. So what's the solution? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gary, do you want to take those questions and then there's a few further speakers afterwards. So we'll take each set of questions first.
Okay, thank you. I'll take them in the order they were asked. In terms of how we are prioritising work, and there'll be maybe a bit of an overlap to the second questions as well, but in terms of how we prioritise our work, it sort of goes back to that slide I talked about with the funding. We will ensure that our assets are maintained, and anything that breaks down we will repair and make sure that we continue to have the assets that we need. We will then move to protecting the clean water infrastructure to make sure that people have clean, safe drinking water. Any additional funding then, we will look at what is contractually obligated and what are we tied into, and then work our way through that prioritisation process. There is no particular priority applied to geography or the particular need, because at the end of the day, we're looking at it from a Northern Ireland-wide perspective. So is there, I think the first question was there a priority for the Northwest? It certainly goes into the mix, but we are not picking out one area over another area. I've been at a number of council meetings recently, and everyone has asked me the same question. And so we look at it on a Northern Ireland-wide perspective, and they work through it that way, with in essence, protecting the clean water in the first perspective. In terms of the H2 sites, and I think it probably came out, the H2 and the Cashel, yes, we are looking at some additional funding that has been allocated to us, but if you put that in the context of, for PC21, we're in the order of, as I said, nearly $500 million, 500 million short. So the additional funding of 20 million is not going to make a big difference to what we do there, but we are certainly looking at what we can do for those sites on in around H2 and Cashel. We have planning permission in for one of the sites for the pumping station, but we have been unable to purchase the land, and we are looking at alternative sites now to try and keep that moving, and the planning will be amended accordingly. So we are doing everything that we can to come up with a solution. Indeed, we're working very closely with the developer of the houses in that area, who has been very proactive in working with us and was one of the first advocates of the stormwater offsetting process. So we have a good working relationship with him. But at the end of the day, there is completely new infrastructure that is required to be built. We need to purchase the land, we need to get the planning, and then the final designs. And that's only for the new infrastructure. Where it connects into the existing assets, we need to make sure that the impact on those existing assets does not worsen any discharges into the receiving water courses. So that sort of ties in with the funding and the bundles, I think, asked in the first question. In terms of the dispensation that was raised there, I think you're probably referring to SORPI. And in essence, that was a agreement between the departments, the Environment Agency and the Department of Infrastructure at the time, in reflecting the years of underinvestment in our infrastructure prior to Northern Ireland Water being formed, and the need for substantial capital investment, and that we needed that sustained capital investment to address the failing infrastructure. And one of the key aspects of that agreement was a zero detriment approach to how we connect new properties or new loading on our network. And that is still the case today, and it's still something that we will look at in terms of trying to connect new properties, that it is always on a zero detriment basis. Northern Ireland Water walks a tightrope between protecting the environment, we are custodians of the environment, and facilitating economic development. And you can imagine the tension between those two, and it's something that we try and manage on a day and daily basis. But that, in essence, is the criteria that we're working at the minute. I know there's a few from the current DERA minister to look at that SORPI agreement, and that may be reviewed, but it's nothing that I can give an opinion on. It's something for DERA to opine on. In terms of monitoring, the volumes that I described in the slides, they come from our models outputs. So we have started to introduce, based on direction from NIEA, monitors in the receiving bathing waters and receiving shellfish areas initially. If you go onto our website, you'll see those that a number have been uploaded, with 130 odds now uploaded with the information from the previous year. But we are working our way into those monitors again. It's something that we never had. We didn't have the funding to do it. We ran a pilot project to prove the concept, and we're out and after that at the minute. But again, if there are constraints on wastewater infrastructure, the ability to put more monitors in will be one of the areas that may be impacted as well. But the monitors give us additional information to add to what we have from the modelling outputs. There may be subtle differences in it, but I think the general magnitudes will be there or thereabouts. And I think we are certainly very aware of the social housing aspect to all of this. Again, we don't put any weighting on it, but we do work very closely with the, indeed, I presented to the Northern Ireland Federation of Housing Associations recently, and we work very closely with the individual housing associations. And we have been successful, I believe, in connecting two developments, admittedly smaller developments in the city here, again, through that, looking at the existing infrastructure, offsetting and acknowledging the brownfield site. So we will work, and our developer services team will work very closely with all the developers and the housing associations.
All right, thank you. Before I bring anybody else on, there was a specific question in relation to capacity at H2 lands, and I think both speakers referred to it. And I know you have, and as part of your answer, you highlighted the need for new infrastructure. We're aware of that, and hopefully we see the planning process and land acquisition progress. But in terms of the current capacity at the H2 lands, just to avoid any uncertainty at all, can we get clarity around what the current capacity is? If developers are coming and working with NI Water, speaking to these in relation to the separation of foul and sewer, or foul and storm, can we? Is there capacity to deliver on the H1 and H2 lands?
Okay, so new infrastructure is required. I think there have been initial discussions with developer services to allow some houses to connect. But we know that we have planning for the site at Lenamore, and we have the land. Expecting a business case to be brought forward for approval in December 24 to start that investment, and that it does come off the back as well of the minister's funding that's come our way. But it, you know, I suppose the majority is associated with new housing, but I think there's been some work done with developer services to allow some to connect, and then you've got the positive movement that's happened over the last month. But with the other site, the Coshquin site, we're still trying to purchase the land or to do a land swap. Planning has been objected to, so there are a few things that are beyond our control there. And as with all sort of large infrastructure projects, these can adjust your timeframes. It's just something that we have to live with as a business. So we explore all possibilities before we go down to compulsory purchase sort of approaches. But you know, very rarely do we do that. We just don't have the powers really that, say, DFI Roads would have to do a compulsory purchase. So we work through all the steps, engage with all the landowners. We have tried to do a land swap as well with, or look at other sites with the developer, Braidwater. So we're exploring that.
Say that. Thank you, Steve. Councillor Tierney.
Chair, thank you, and thanks to Gary and Stephen for being here today. I think my question may have just been answered, but I just want to get clarity on it. You talk about the need for infrastructure, particularly around H1 and H2, and the investment of £15 million for 2 new pumping stations to service those lands. I understand that there is planning for a new pumping station. You're saying Lenamore. I understand it's Illickmore Park, and what's known locally as the frying pan, where the bus turns is where it actually is. There are some concerns from residents there. I would just like to know, in relation to the £15 million, are you saying that you don't have that money at the moment? And you then Gary further talked in relation to Councillor Harkin's question around the Northwest not being a priority as such and looking at it across the North as a whole. There must be some type of list somewhere. You might not want to call it a priority list, but there may be some type of list where work is going to be completed. Whereabouts on that list does the pumping stations for H1 and H2 sit? Because as other speakers have already outlined, and I think you outlined this yourself, Gary, this is holding up major housing development. But there's also further concerns, I believe, that have to be taken into consideration, and possibly as political representatives, work that we will have to do on the ground to allow for, I suppose, to engage with residents around the potential of further infrastructure within that area. And then, after pointing that, if the 15 million isn't there for that, the works that was carried out to upgrade the Galia pumping station, which was the service through the Illickmore one, are you saying now that is effectively null and void at the moment because it's not the transport way as it coming through, if that makes sense? Thank you, Chair.
Dave, just if we hold on, because there's a few more indicated speakers and I'm going to take them together. So Councillor Farrell and then Alderman Hussey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Gary and Stephen, for coming today. It's not a question, it's more of a comment. I would agree with everything that's been said by the other speakers, but I want to touch briefly on the impact of the lack of capacity within NI Water and the impact on houses across this city and district. Figures released the other day show there's 6,338 people on a waiting list. And in your pack here today, you're saying that lack of capacity is impacting 5,300 new homes being built in this area. They're needed now. And the sad reality is the failure to invest in infrastructure in the Northwest over the years is really, really, really impacting that. And everybody says there's been historic underinvestment in NI Water across the North, but it's been particularly stark here in Derry City and Strabane. Since 2015, Derry and Strabane has the third lowest level of investment of all council areas across the north. When you look at it as a per head of population, we get the second lowest level of investment. Since 2015, it's been £370 per person. Antrim and Newton Abbey of £650 per person. So we get 55 million since 2015. If we get the same level of funding per head of population as Antrim and Newton Abbey, we'd have £100 million worth of investment. So if you need an argument to invest here in this city, and you're saying there's a long list of priorities, we believe the 15 million for the pumping station should be a priority. Those are figures you can quote, because this needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. And we understand the budget pressures in Stormont, but for the last 9 years, we've been bottom of the pile. Thank you.
Yeah. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to your presentation. Limited as it is, because I look at the remit of your being here in the final sentence, and throughout the entire area of the Foyle Basin, including tributaries thereof. Now, you did mention Castleberry, but are there maps of the other drainage areas? You've concentrated on the Culmore drainage area. I would like to see maps of the other areas and the constraints that exist within them. I know there are constraints, for example, in Sion Mills. There have been for a long, long time in that area. I know that there are certain works being carried out in certain areas. And I suppose the ultimate problem is wastewater treatment. That's the big issue that we see coming down the line. And if we could have an indication, obviously I don't expect it at this meeting, but I would like to see the maps for the other drainage areas within our district council area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. And I've got one further indicated speaker, so I'm going to bring her on now. Alderman Cook, online.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in, and thanks to Gary and Stephen for coming along today and giving us their presentation. I'm just going to concur with the other speakers. A lot of what any questions I have was answered. But statistics like the 1.5 million cubic meters of sewage that's going into the Lochfoyle and local water courses each year is scary to hear, and the massive underinvestment. So I think it's just a matter of us all working together, keep lobbying for funding that is very much needed within the city and district. So thanks very much.
I'm going to get questions, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Mooney. Go on ahead.
So I think the first one now was about, do we have the money? I think for the H1 and the H2, or do we have the 15 million? Now, as a business, I suppose we get a fixed allocation for annual program. So, and we've got a big rolling program. So a lot of our investment is already committed. If we bring something in, it needs to be ready to go. So if we've got the land and we've got the planning, then we can proceed, and we NIE and roads infrastructure as well, then we can proceed. Okay, so you can't ring fence a 15 million for the Scoglands or the H1, H2. But what we can do is move forward with a portion of that for the Lenamore pumping station. If we sort the lands out and the planning for the Cosh Quinn elements, then we can bring that forward as a priority. And it would have been in part of the PC21 business plan and under our sort of first time service, sub-programs that we have for growth. So there would be an allocation in there. But as I say, we can't sort of ring fence and then get to the end of the year. If we didn't get planning, we'd have to hand the money back. So that's not a good, efficient use of funding. The best thing for a large sort of capital investment business like us is to have funding certainty, and then we can get real efficiencies going and deliver more for the people across the whole of the country. So we have to make the most efficient use of that funding as we go forward each year. So we can do some shuffling around, but there's a limit to what we can do. But we're very hopeful that we can get the Lenamore business case up and investment approved and start moving on that for you guys. And then pending positive outcomes on the planning and the lands, start doing the same with the Cosh Quinn. Okay.
And just to add a bit of texture and flavour to that, Steve's right, there's a process that we work through, but I can tell you that there is a lot of focus within the directorate that I look at, and also the delivery directorate, in endeavouring to find solutions for those areas. So we are working on it, and as soon as we have the solutions, then they'll be brought forward into the delivery programme. So Steve's quite correct, there isn't a pot of money ring fence for those, but I can tell you now there's a lot of focus being given to developing those solutions, trying to ensure that we have the land and the planning and everything in place to ultimately deliver it as soon as we can, and then look at the what is required and the downstream elements to connect them. So I mean, setting aside the funding bit, I can say now there is a lot of focus, a lot of resource being applied to developing the solutions and finding an answers for those, because we appreciate the quantum of the housing and the need, particularly for social housing. But on the other hand, we are also endeavouring to ensure that it is done in that zero detriment impact to the environment, and we need to be very mindful. I can't just facilitate connections of new properties and then that has a negative impact on the environment. So just to add that bit of sort of emphasis to what Steve said. In terms of the other areas, certainly we can bring some additional detail for the constraints across the province. But I know myself, because I worked on it, there is work in Sion Mills, and we believe that there's particular benefit from the removal of stormwater from a number of the developments there. So it is not just focused on in and around the city here. We are looking right across the whole borough. Looking back up and I crack on, yeah.
And Councillor Farrell had the question in about investment in the northwest. So because we're funded in price control, sort of 6-year period. So PC15 period was constrained. So there was very little for wastewater. It's been the Cinderella for a long time. PC21 was the first plan there where we've gone, so it's maximised the investment we can within what's called the tariff. So we've had a plan there, and we've done a lot of investment in models, getting information together, future planning as well. And we've always said that this is a multi-price control problem. Wastewater capacity can't be solved in 6 years. We haven't got the supply chain, we haven't got the funds, so it has to be spread. All our business plans are developed with our regulators, the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, the Drinking Water Inspectorate, the Consumer Council, and with the shareholder DFI, and priority set with the social and environmental guidance they produce. So we're on that journey. Funding is I suppose allocated that way. It's not done on a council by council or an area basis. It's based on the needs of the asset, and they get the investment that they're crying out for. And what we're finding at the moment, it's constrained at the moment, or particularly constrained now. We had good funding levels in the first 2 years, and then we had a reduction last year, and look like that level is going to continue for the foreseeable future. So as Gary showed in the slide, there's this 0.8 of £1 billion, nearly £1 billion that's come out of wastewater. So everyone's hurting there, and it means that more base maintenance is required just to keep the roof watertight, if you like, on the assets. And there's not much left for upgrades, and that looks like that'll continue for the remainder of PC21. So it's a very difficult situation for all. And we do get a sizable part of the budget from the Minister and DFI, but there's such a lot to do. Okay, and I think the final one there, we can provide the drainage area plans for those other areas as well. I will get those to you after this meeting.
Thank you. I have a few indicated speakers, Councillor Mooney and then Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Gary and Stephen. Just 2 points raising from the pack here. There's 1 point here that says we've encountered 34 network UEDs unsatisfactory intermittent discharges across 23 towns. Have you any figures to say how many apply to the Derry City area? And secondly, you've estimated 5,300 units currently affected in our council area, and you have two figures here, 4,000 for H1, H2, and 931 for Cluny. There's a surplus of about 370. Would you have any details about what the other areas affected in the town as well, possibly? Thank you.
Emma?
Very good, Chair, and more so of a comment. A lot of the questions have been asked, but I wanted to touch on the progress at Foyle Street. I think that the work that has been ongoing and the consultation that's happened with businesses and the adjustments that have been made to suit their needs is welcome. And we're looking forward to seeing that work completed. So I just wanted to touch on it. I think it's definitely a good piece of work. Well done.
Absolutely, and the fact that the streets been able to be reopened again in the run up to Christmas is usually welcomed by the businesses. And I'm going to, because I indicated at the start, I had a few questions. A lot of them have been asked, but there's, see, in relation to the five, and it's maybe a follow on from Councillor Mooney's question, the 5,300 connections that are impacted within this council area. How does that compare with other council areas? And because I know you've, I think it was Steve that that made the statement, and very clear statement, that investment isn't by council or geographical area; it's based on need. And so it would be interesting to know how other council areas are being impacted, or what the constraints are in other council areas, and are any of the other council areas constrained to the level that we are. So just if you can pick up on those, please.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for the acknowledgement about the good work done on Foyle Street. It's always good to get a bit of positive feedback at times, so thank you for that. In terms of the number of UIDs within the city area, I say we estimate 50 to 83% within the city area are classified as UIDs or on an unsatisfactory condition. There are a small number, obviously, then that are satisfactory, but there's different degrees of how bad those are, and we certainly will look at trying to maximise the benefit to environment when we look at that in alignment with the development opportunities. So that's the sort of numbers of UIDs there. Back to yourself in terms of how does this council area compare to others? It's probably up there in terms of the number of properties impacted, but obviously there's quite a big skew because of the numbers associated with the H1 and H2 lands, but it is a problem right across Northern Ireland. But there is certainly a large number of properties impacted in this council area, and you will certainly be up in the top of that leaderboard if it's unfortunately. So.
Okay, no, thank you. And I do have one further speaker. So, Anton, Councillor Farrell.
Thanks very much, Chair. No, just to add to your good news as well, I actually live in the village of Sion Mills, and you've carried out work there, and I have to say, it was always there was always a terrible problem just where I live itself with flooding. Now, what they did was they upsized the pipe, and as well as that, they put in reservoirs to take the pressure off, and it's been a great success. But just adding on what Alderman Hussey said, I too would like to see the maps of similar stuff in the areas, especially again Castledearg, Sion Mills, the Glebe and Clary, because apparently the infrastructure is a big constraint on any developments, and we're crying out for social housing or even private housing, but these are the restraints that are there, and we might not get the housing because of that. Good, thank you.
Thank you. We're running the risk of redoing all of this. Councillor Tierney, I'll bring you in very briefly.
I'll be very quick, Chair. When I just jump back to the H1 and H2 lands, we were told that one of the hold-ups around that is the land and the land transaction. I am of the understanding that that land belongs to another government agency. And could you maybe give us a wee rundown on what the actual hold-up is? Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Appreciate that.
Okay. So yes, thank you once again for the comments on Sign Mills, and we will certainly bring the maps for the other areas or provide those. I suppose our focus, we had been asked sort of off the back of the discharges into the foil in around the city here. That was really sort of our focus, but certainly we can broaden it out and provide those. I'm not cited on the ownership necessarily.
It's going through.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe just, sorry.
Sorry, that's so yeah, the lands for the Lenamore pumping station that we're progressing is with the Department of Communities. So that is being closed out. You know, that's why we can proceed, you know, with the business case. The one where we're struggling with is the Cosh Quinn. So that's the sticking point. So it's the planning has been objected to, and we're having difficulty get the site, but we're working with Braidwater on that on an alternative site there. Trying, you know, so it's trying to get the right tie-in so that the infrastructure works for us. So that's closes that one. Okay.
Very briefly, Alderman.
I will be very brief, Chair. Those of us who attended the unadopted roads meeting are aware of the issues that have arisen relative to Northern Ireland Water, who didn't attend the meeting. Road Service were there. Can we have a commitment from Northern Ireland Water that we will have somebody at our next unadopted roads meeting to deal with the issues that are relevant to their provision? Thank you.
Okay, and it may not be those that are at the chamber that are in a position to answer that, but I'm sure they can relay the request. And I've opened the Pandora's box. Councillor Haney.
No, it's just again back to the pumping station in Cosh Quinn. It's my understanding that the developer has offered an alternative site that could bring a solution to that particular problem. So I'm just wondering if that's your understanding as well.
Yes, that's the understanding. So, but I think the planning has still been objected to. So we're working through that. But you're right, we have got working closely with the developer on getting a solution for that area.
Okay, that brings our deputation to a close. There's no further questions online. I just want to thank Gary and Stephen for attending today. I'm sure they'll relay the request and invitation in relation to the unadopted roads, and I know our council officers will follow that up as well. I know this was it's an issue that there's a lot of interest in that members have alluded to. There's a huge housing crisis in our city, particularly in the city, but it extends right across our council area. We've got huge economic aspirations, as well as a stern commitment to protect our environment. So it's good that NI Water share and their ambitions. We've got a clear commitment from yourselves that you are willing to work with developers. They develop and deliver houses as and when you can within the constraints. And it's good that there's a commitment that you will work with developers. So that's hopefully that extends to sharing information around where capacity does arise, so we can deliver houses where our developers can deliver houses wherever there is capacity, because as members, and it's not going to come as any surprise to yourself, housing is one of the biggest issues within this council area, and we're keen to work with everybody involved, particularly yourselves, to ensure that those are delivered. So thanks, and I know we hopefully can continue that engagement, and hopefully the constraints that are here in future years will be addressed. But thanks for taking the time to come to the committee in person and answer the questions and present and answer questions of members. So thank you on behalf of the committee.
Thank you very much.
These are free to leave, or you. Members, moving on to chairperson's business, and I have one item of chair's business, and I'll be very, very brief. It's to welcome Councillor Brian Hart to the committee. It's the first meeting of the Governance and Strategic Planning meeting, so you're very welcome, Brian. And
thank you, Chair.
So moving on now to matters arising from the open minutes of the Governance and Strategic Planning meeting held on Tuesday, the 5th of November. Matters arising. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and I seek clearance from Philip on this. Item 20724, the NSA conference and meetings. Given that this has been determined at full council, am I at liberty to comment on the content of this here? That's number one. And number two, I want to give a report back from the conference that I did attend.
So I'm going to provide the rather irritating caveat that I always provide in relation to these matters, to say that conflicts of interest are always a matter for the individual member. However, I have to say that as the decision has already been made by the council in relation to this matter, and there is no request, I assume, coming from yourself now for any further decision to be made by the council at today's meeting, then I don't think there's an issue.
Thank you for that clarification, Philip. With your permission, Chair.
Well, essentially, I'm not entirely clear of what you're asking in the first instance, and I do know I respect the advice that we've received from a legal representative, but I am conscious that there is a further request, albeit it's not at this meeting, but there is a further request, and it would be much more appropriate if there was a formal paper brought by officers in respect to that. I have no doubt that officers will get in contact with yourself to inform that paper, but I would much prefer that the paper was presented by officers rather than a member.
I appreciate that, Chair, and I'll make no comment then on the content of that, but have I permission to report back from the conference that I was given permission to attend, to report to this committee?
If you wish to make a comment, you're free to make a comment at this stage, but there will be no decision made on the back of it.
Chair, thank you. Thank you to full council who approved attendance at the conference in AGM. Just to report, I did travel over on the Friday, back on the Sunday, albeit I had a cancelled sailing on the Sunday, but eventually got back home. Session opened on the Friday evening, and strangely enough, the session was led by the chairman of the Scottish section of the Showman's Guild. And I thought, what is this about? But it turned out to be an extremely interesting session. And I have asked for email copy of the presentation that was made by that gentleman, and would be very relevant to particularly our events team. And I would hope to liaise with them when the report comes through on that. But certainly, we have an excellent events team working on big events, but moving down to the smaller events, I feel that there's room for improvement, and the particular presentation, and indeed, I would hope that we can have liaison with the Northern Ireland and South Wales section of the Showman's Guild in regard to what they can offer to this council and to our communities going forward. On the second day, we looked at Local Government Resource Centre, and that was the Town Council Chief Executive on the issue of Keep It Local, combined with local government procurement and commissioning. And I know that this council has a tremendous interest in local government procurement and commissioning, social clauses, etc. There were some tremendous ideas in both of those presentations. And again, I would hope that when I receive those, they'll be in the members' libraries for members to peruse if they wish. I would hope to engage with officers on things that we can take forward. The final session was with Councillor Anne Boner, who's originally from Northern Ireland. She's the training officer of NAC. And her session was on how can we as councillors support local social enterprise. I will comment on that. And this was a common comment from the other representatives from Northern Ireland who were there. We're ahead of the game in Northern Ireland on supporting social enterprise. So we were actually assisting those from England, Scotland, and Wales who were in attendance at the conference. And I think it's worthwhile noting that. Again, I've asked Councillor Anne to consider coming to Northern Ireland, producing some of their conferences, their training in Northern Ireland and specifically in our district council area going forward. Additionally, I will be submitting into the members' library the constitution of NAC UK and get new guidelines that they have for personal safety guide for councillors, remembering that NAC is a member organisation and it's there for the benefit of councillors as such. And all 462 councillors in Northern Ireland are members of NAC through their particular council bodies. So I'll leave it at that as a report from the conference, and if there are any questions from members, I'm prepared to take them. Thank you.
Well, I'm not prepared to allow a question and answer session at this stage. So I appreciate the offer, but I don't think it's appropriate at this stage. But it's good. It's good the fact that you were able to give that update while it's fresh in your mind, and it's great to see that you finally made it home. Councillor Tierney, have you a question or have you a comment? I want to avoid a question at this stage, but if you've got a comment,
It's not a question, Chair. It's a comment, and I don't think. Well, it's certainly been a long time since I ever felt uncomfortable sitting in this council chamber, and I'm actually disappointed, Chair, that you allowed Alderman Hussey to give that update. I made the point at full council that we need to consider the benefits of attending these meetings, and we needed to get the benefits outlined to us by the NAC, not by Alderman Hussey. I appreciate the update, but it should not have been given before we got the paper back, which you suggested before you give it. I don't think it's appropriate that we are being told the benefits of the NAC by the person who is benefiting from the position within the NAC before we get any notification from the NAC in relation to that position. And I'm very disappointed that we were allowed to have this, that Alderman Hussey was allowed to present that before we get that information back, Chair. That's a turn away from the position at full council. That's a move away from the position of this council at full council recently. Thank you.
okay, and it doesn't get your point across any more by pointing. Just pointing that out. But
I wasn't pointing. I was pointing my finger out to turn off my microphone, Chair. I'm not that rude. I wouldn't point at anyone.
Okay. And I note your disappointment, but I had a request from a member of the committee, and I respect that request. And he's given the update. I don't feel that it's detracted too much from the business of this committee. But any further matters arising? Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for being late. I got stuck on work. Just on, it's from Chair's business from last month too, on the violence against women and girls. First of all, to thank, at this full council, but again, to thank officers for the hard work they're doing, working with the community groups to engage and to move forward with the 10 actions from the presentations we'd received in the special council meeting. Also to mention that the Reclaim the Night rally is on this Saturday, 5:30 at Everington for everyone, men and women, to come along to. So just to encourage people to attend. But just a third point is I've been speaking with a man who has been putting on free self-defence classes for women in the city. And I suppose just to see is there anything we can do to support him, to see if there's any funding out there, because he's not going to be able to continue to put them on for free because it's a business and it's his livelihood. So I'm wondering, is there anyone, could you point me in the direction of where I could go to in council to see if we can support him to get a bit of funding so they can continue to be free and accessible to everybody, but that he's not going to be losing out as well. So just thank you.
Well, appreciate that, and maybe we could arrange for a funding officer to get in touch with him.
Or if Councillor can respond.
Apologies, Chief Executive, just for the benefit of those that are online.
Councillor McDade, if you wish to send us an email with the details, we can consider whether there are any opportunities and advise back. I don't want to raise expectation, but if you want to send us in the details, we can look at it. Yeah.
Okay, any further matters arising? Okay, going to move on now to the item 8, the overview of initiatives to promote the languages of Irish and Ulster Scots. It's Ellen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And through you, Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide members with an overview of initiatives being undertaken by the Council from the period January to December 24 to promote the languages of Irish and Ulster Scots, and in doing so fulfilling its legislative obligations under the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages, and also delivering on its commitment to promote and celebrate linguistic diversity in the area. And also the report aims to recommend to members to endorse the report approach and note the positive progress. As set out in the background, there's some details there in terms of our policies in terms of Irish and Ulster Scots and our legislative commitments under Part 2 and 3 of the legislation, and also the principles on which that charter is set out. The key issues for members' consideration is that councils under that legislation need to take resolute action to protect and promote the languages of Irish and Ulster Scots. In council here, we have taken a range of initiatives, including the policies for Irish and Ulster Scots and an ongoing programme of events and initiatives to raise awareness of linguistic diversity. Included within that programme of events are campaigns such as Irish Language Week and Ulster Scots Week, details of which are provided in Appendices 1 and Appendices 2. And in terms of the implications, as well as taking forward language initiatives within this, there are also rural, age-friendly and child-friendly dimensions to the work of the section. And the recommendation in front of members today is that you endorse the current approach, note the positive work undertaken, and as I say, and that is in terms of promoting languages and fulfilling our obligations. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Ellen. Councillor O'Farrell.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Ellen. While in Sinn Féin, Fáilte Chur Ribbon and Horace, we'd like to welcome it. First of all, I'd like to say that you mentioned a few words there, diversity. Sinn Féin promotes and celebrates diversity in all its forms, and to us, languages are of the utmost importance, and culture. To us, the Irish language is the centre of our culture. But I have to praise the work that the officers have done here in the council themselves in promoting the language. I know that some of the staff are learning Irish language classes here, and listen, I'm looking forward to the day where I can talk to you in Irish, Gan, Berla, Lorts and Shore, or Scorby. But no, we're moving in the right direction. There's a hell of a lot we can do yet, but we're getting there. In the area itself, the Irish language is flourishing from Derry to Strabane, Castlederg. We have a new Gael school in Strabane. It's state of the art. The Irish language is definitely on the up. But as I say, there's a hell of a lot we can still do. And recently we passed a motion pledging support for the LINRA projects that are going on. And the sooner we get one in Derry to link up with Letterkenny and the west, the Gaeltachts, the better. But no, Ellen, listen, I would like you to take that back to Aaron and Paul as well. And I would like to compliment them on the work that they're doing. And I'd like to see them, I'm Egan and Shaw, so do I get Jucky Lum, our Gora, Yanis the Gaelic. I would like them to be in the council sometime for these reports, you know. But just another thing, is there any way, I know we're doing our best to Gaelicicize the whole area with Irish language signage and that. Could you bring an update on the progress of the street names, the Sraj Anyamnacha? because if a lot of people coming to me and saying, listen, I'm waiting a year and a half now for our street sign to be changed to Irish. It still hasn't been done, you know, and I'm talking about businesses, Staban, Sion Mills, Glebe, Clary, the whole lot. People are waiting over a year and a half, still haven't got anything done. So, but I'm sorry about that negative note, but Guramila Mayogat, thank you very much for the report.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Members, we intend to bring an updated report in relation to street signage in the January Committee of Environment and Regeneration in terms of I suppose the current applications that are in the system. As members will be aware from previous reports to ENR, we've very limited resources in place to take these forward, and we do try and take them forward as quickly as we can. And we can include some information in relation to that when we bring the further report in January as well. I understand people's frustration, but we genuinely do move them on as quickly as the current resources allow. And apologies.
Thanks, Karen. And Anton, I know you endorsed the work that was going on. I'm taking from your remarks that you proposed a recommendation.
Without doubt, aye.
Okay. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second it, obviously. Hardly match Councillor Farrell's enthusiasm there, but certainly I will do my best to. But I spoke to the motion on Thursday, probably Councillor Nealis, and obviously this is a very good report and a very good expose of this year's events, and again how Aaron and Paul are, you know, promoting the language in our council area, and wish them the best and hope to keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. And like others, I'd like to congratulate Paul on the work that he does. It's a pity that it's Policy Officer Irish Language and that's the official title. As we know, it includes Ulster Scots, and I know that there has been considerable attempted outreach from the department on that. Indeed, I would encourage more groups, the Ulster Scots groups, to make contact with Council and to assist Council in fulfilling that role of promoting not only language, but the actual culture that evolves around the particular language. I will express a slight disappointment that it's only Irish and Ulster Scots. You know that I had a Welsh father and I was born in Cornwall, so those two are left out of it, but thank you.
Okay, I've no further indicated speakers. There's recommendations been proposed by Councillor O'Farrell, seconded by Councillor Mooney. And despite Alderman Hussey's concerns, I do sense that there's the proposal is unanimous. So I'm going to take that as unanimous. Okay, moving on. Item 9, the NELGA Leadership Development Programme for elected members. Again, handing over to Ellen.
Yes, through you, Chair, this report aims to, or asks members to consider participation in the NELGA Leadership Development Programme 2025, and if participation is agreed, to approve the payment of the associated costs. By way of background, as I say, this is a regional programme sort of organised via NELGA, and members are offered the opportunity to enrol in this programme and to achieve accreditation. However, that part of it is optional. As indicated in the background, there had been interest expressed by a number of members in this course, and most of that has been addressed as set out in the report, and that there will be also, again for information purposes, a briefing to the member development group on Monday the 9th of December at 2 p.m. If any members are actually interested. As highlighted under the key issues there, the programme consists of 8 modules and will commence in January 25. And as NELGA has already indicated that it will be delivered twice in the 23-27 year, this will be probably the last opportunity till the next electoral term. Costs of the programme are outlined in the report as being £730 per participant, with an additional 590 if somebody wants accreditation. The recommendation in front of members today is that you consider participation on this leadership development programme and, subject to your approval, approve participation up to a maximum of 3 members, which can be accommodated in the member development budget. Thank you, members.
Councillor Tierney.
Chair, thank you. First of all, just to declare an interest, I am on the executive, NULGA executive, and office bearer in that executive. So just to declare that interest first and foremost. But second of all, we pay NULGA a substantial amount of money every year as a member. Similar to the conversation we had last month, if we're a member of that organisation, why are we being asked to pay for the facilities that that organisation are hosting? Thank you.
Okay, there's a question there. Ellen, do you want to pick up on that?
Through you, Chair, it's my understanding that the membership fee doesn't include these third-party type qualifications, and the accreditation itself would be to a third party. So in calculating the membership fees, NULGA haven't incorporated the training because it would be based on what the take-up is per council as such. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation, Ellen. That was very useful. Thank you.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to Councillor Tierney, we pay NULGA £59,368. That's what we paid last year, as opposed to the 3,200 from NIC, but it's 59,368. And I would have thought, if that's the figure that's been paid, that NULGA could have afforded to allow its members that additional training. I suppose the solution might be for another organisation to seek more. That said, I would encourage members who feel that they want to go on this programme to do so, because training for elected members is a vital part of what we need going forward, particularly the newer members in the chamber. Some of us is probably a bit too long in the tooth to be undergoing the training, but it certainly is worthwhile. I know that Councillor Guy, I think, was one of the previous ones who undertook that training. Is that correct, Elaine? Or Ellen? And I do know that he did find it extremely useful to him in his work. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I want to highlight the fact that I am also on the NULGA executive. Don't feel it's a requirement to declare an interest, but I'll just point it out there that I am on the NULGA, and I've declared it as appointed to this council. I know.
Sure, I maybe need to declare I'm one of the NULGA reps as well.
Okay. But in relation to that, well, I know Alderman Cook is indicated that she is currently participating in this programme, and at the risk of further annoying Councillor Tierney, I would invite Alderman Cook, if she wishes, to share her experience around the benefits that this programme brings, and encourage those that are interested to attend the briefing session on the 9th of December. So, Alderman Cook.
I think it might be better if you leave the jokes to comedians.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair, for that, man. Yeah, I'm still currently participating. I've still one more module to do, and then the accreditation itself. But I find it very useful. You know, it will help in my role as a councillor. It helps you identify and problem solve, you know, any challenges that may arise. So I find it very, very useful. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, members, and as in highlighted to anybody that wishes to receive further information, there is a session early December, 9th of December. But in relation to the recommendations, I haven't had a proposed by Councillor Hussey, Alderman Hussey, seconded by Councillor McGinley. Everybody in support? Yep. And we take that as unanimous, members. Item 10 is a 6-monthly progress report of strategic planning and supports. And again, is it Ellen?
Yes, through you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise and seek members' comments and endorsement in relation to the progress against the Strategic Planning and Support Unit's delivery plan for 2024-25. This report is being presented as part of our planning improvement and performance framework, and as such, which requires at directorate level 6 monthly reports and directorate delivery plans are provided to the committees. The particular report in front of you today provides an overview of the progress against all of the actions identified in the delivery plan for the first 6 months, i.e. April to September. It's noted that in terms of progress, we are at 54% overall delivery, and work is ongoing in terms of the completion of the other activities and objectives identified within the plan. The recommendation in front of members today is subject to your comments. That particular progress report is endorsed. Thank you, members.
Thanks, Ellen. One dedicated speaker so far, Councillor Duffy online.
Hi, thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and apologies for not being able to get in the chamber today, but just wanted to comment on this report. Thank you, Ellen. I think it's a hugely positive report. We do have huge capital ambitions right across the council area, and we did have a capital working group. I think it was 2 weeks ago now, and we were able to explore a lot of the projects that we have ambitions around, and just to comment specifically around Templemore. And it's really good to see the complex progressing as well. It is identified in this as a £75 million project, and we're 50% looking at completion. But at this stage, I know that it's good to see that continuing to progress. It is all reliant on us continuing with our funding strategy that we agreed during the last rates process, and impacted then by the positive announcements around the airport. But I know as we move into January and move into our new rates process, that we need to continue to look at that funding strategy if we are going to achieve those ambitions that we have. But it is good to see that Templemore is progressing, and that we are looking at now appointing a new design team to look at it. So I just want to welcome that, Ellen. So thank you for the report.
Okay, thank you. And I'm taking from the positive remarks that you're content to propose
Yep.
the report. Councillor McGinley and then Councillor Fox.
Chair, and similar to Sandra's comments, it is a positive report, specifically in relation to capital development. I know that the extension of the gas yard, the new stand at the Brandywell, and the development of the Daisy Field are 3 massive projects within my DEA that I'm delighted to see progress in. In early December, the members that are elected to the Moor ward are getting to visit the Daisy Field, so I'm looking forward to that, to see it on site. One further comment, and Ellen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't find in the report any reference to the ethical procurement policy and how that's progressing, which is disappointing, that it's not within the report, and we would sort of expect that that would be contained within these progress reports, because we did specify at the time when the motion was brought forward to council that we would see progress within the calendar year. So if we can get an update on that, I would appreciate it, or if another report can be brought back, that's okay. But that's my comments. Thank you for the report, and I'll second the recommendation if required, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to bring up all our members on first, and then come back to CFL. Councillor Farrell, and then Alderman.
Thank you, Chair, and I would just like to welcome the report and second it if required on behalf of the SDLP. This is the sort of half-year mark, and we're at 54% already. So there's a lot of work has been done. That's really, really positive. Again, on capital projects, people have touched on, progressing city deal, getting a financial deal, hopefully getting to the sort of final business cases. We've touched on the development and progress, hopefully very, very soon at Templemore. And there's something on here that has been a bit of a saga, and it was about the public artwork about shirt factory workers. And we can see out the back that there's been a lot of activity recently. The public realm is taking shape. We understand that it should be done by the end of Q1. We might see the public artwork in place before then. But in the vein of arts and culture, I have asked on a couple of occasions about Mute Meadow, which is the public artwork at the end of the Peace Bridge near Everington, which hasn't been operational for a number of years. The feedback at B&C was that budget was identified. There was an issue in terms of project management resource. Is there any update on that, or are we at a position with that project to include it in this, or would that be something we're looking at in the next financial year? But any update on Mute Meadow would be great. Thank you.
I'm going to bring Alderman Hussey in and then bring off.
It's just a brief one to express disappointment on, I suppose, and it's particular concern of mine, and that's the paying those who send us invoices. I noticed there's no progress in increasing the percentage to be paid within 30 days and the percentage to be paid within 10 days. Cash flow can be a big issue for many of our firms, particularly our smaller firms, and I find it disappointing that there's actually no progress made there on that particular aspect of council business yet. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, just coming in a few of these, stand to be corrected by Ellen, but the notice of motion on ethical procurement policy post-dated the actions for the year that were set out in the development plans last year. So that's going to be taken forward separately. We will be bringing, it wouldn't have appeared in this list. It'll appear most likely in next year's list as we're progressing it. So we'll be bringing forward a report on that, Councillor McGinley. I don't have the specifics in relation to Mute Meadow, so I will ask for an update on that. As we know, there have been ongoing issues with Mute Meadow since the day it was built. So the lighting in particular. So we'll bring back some detail on that. And the invoices issue, again, there's work underway to improve upon that situation. So we'll have a separate report on that one as well.
Okay, members. And I know there's the report identified a wide range of work that's carried out by council, and what's been alluded to already, there's quite a lot of progress being made. It's right that members will focus on where improvements need to be or where, but it doesn't detract away from our appreciation of all the work that's been done. They bring progress, bring projects along and progress them to the stage that they have, and there's quite a few that have got to the stage of delivery, and that's we are seeing the benefit that is having within our city and district. So we do have a proposal from Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor McGinley. I am not sensing any disagreement with the proposal, so I'm going to take that as unanimous. So members, moving on, and items 11 to 13 are open for information. And I'm going to take them as read unless anybody indicates that they wish to speak on any of them. No. There's nobody online, so I'm going to ask for a proposer to go into confidential. Councillor Mooney, and seconded Councillor McGinley.